Prairie Sun and Timber, a Build original series, is brought to you by Proseco, Interlux Windows, and TimberTech.
I'm Travis Brungart with Catalyst Construction, but also the Build Show, and I'm standing in front of our Prairie Sun and Timber project here in Kansas City. Now, Interlux windows are what you're seeing behind me on this project, and we were thrilled to work with Interlux on this project because of their extremely high performance packages for both windows and doors. Now, this is a fiberglass window product, and if you're used to high performance windows, you're used to seeing a lot of chunkier frames. That's something that our architects oftentimes don't favor. They like those clean, narrow lines. We want to give the maximum viewable glass, and that's what Interlux provided. With U values down around 0.14, I've been thrilled with the performance on them. They're very quiet, air leakage extremely low, and then being sort of local to us, it kind of makes me feel like I'm supporting local, but they do service nationally. So if you're looking for a high performance window with low air leakage, really great triple glaze performance with clean lines and a very durable fiberglass frame, Interlux might be a good choice for you. Welcome back to the Prairie Sun and Timber series. Thanks for joining us for episode 2. In this episode, we want to talk to you about SIPS, structurally insulated panels, and timber framing. And these are two ends of the spectrum when we start talking about building technologies, because timber framing is one of the oldest traditions in construction. The art of making a joint that locks two wooden timbers together to make the structure of the home. It's a time-honored tradition, and it's still very popular, but it's not part of our everyday builds. It's really something specialized, chosen for aesthetic value anymore, more so than necessity, because we've got nail guns and speed and all the things that we can do with steel and welding. Timber framing isn't the standard, it's exceptional. But that time-honored tradition of craftsmanship marries really well with a different technology that is more modern, and that's the structurally insulated panel. What we have with a structurally insulated panel is essentially a sandwich. A layer of structural sheathing in OSB, a middle of EPS, expanded polystyrene insulation, and then another structural panel of OSB. So I like to think of it like an ice cream sandwich. The SIPS panel is essentially designed so that you have eliminated all thermal bridging from the outside to the inside of your structure. So these panels make up the entire structure that surrounds the house, but they have to set on something. And rather than having a bunch of glue lam or LVL, we've got a nice vaulted ceiling filled up with big, beautiful timbers. The structural timbers that make up the timber frame will be interlocked with some, I guess you'd say, traditional joinery. A lot of wooden pegs through holes, as well as a mortise and tenon joint is most common, and we'll show you that in the house. But here in this episode, we really want to emphasize the perfect marriage of these two technologies, the old world, the beautiful craftsmanship, and then the cutting edge performance that we're going to get out of these panels. Let's check it out. Before we get into our SIPS and timber framing, let me show you how we framed out our down walls. We're working through the down walls here on the walkout portion of our project. And this is the only wall section that's part of the conditioned space of the home that isn't a SIP, structural insulated panel assembly. We're field framing this 2x6, 24-inch on center, and then to match the R value of the SIPs upstairs, we're doing a 2-inch, well, it's the Zip R9 product. So it's an 1.5 inch of polyiso pre-adhered to the back of a zip panel to make up that Zip R9 product. And that gives us a continuous thermal break from the exterior. So with this, the only thing we really have to do that's a little bit different is more nailing. We use a special nail per the nailing schedule offered at Huber.com. We use the nailing pattern prescribed, which Joe looked up before we got started. It's 3 around the perimeter and 12 in the field. 3-inch on center, 12 in the field. It's a nice big thick nail, and we got to make sure that we hit the studs or we're not nailing anything. So this is how we're handling all of our down walls across the back at the walkout condition. Our zip R is, as you can see, flying wild above our double top plate because we're getting ready to move to our floor system, which is going to be an I-joist floor system, specially cut from McCray Lumber here in Kansas City, to have all of our ductwork openings already cut through the web so that we can move really quickly on our mechanicals. And since Joe and I perform plumbing, electrical, and mechanical in-house, we tend to want to do as much of that in advance as we can. McCray just added this special saw system that pre-cuts everything to length, numbers it, very much like a ready frame system where you have your components kind of paint by number. It's already labeled, the openings are already cut, so as we're framing, we'll be sliding duct runs through before we close off for bends, and we'll be excited to share that with you. We're doing everything we can to maximize our efficiency, not just in the performance of the house, but the efficiency of labor in the field. Joe and I are standing in front of what is an almost finished subfloor in, for us, record time. How'd we get there, Joe?
Well, we teamed up with our local lumber yard, McCray Lumber in Boise Cascade, and you sat down with them. I sat down with them also, but you did the final drawings with them, and they created this. This is basically a paint by numbers floor system. Everything's pre-cut, it's labeled, tells you exactly where to put it. Even our LVLs were pre-cut for us.
Yeah,
so
great.
2 days later, we have a floor system.
And we're actually not just excited about the floor, which is covered in X Factor, so we're not worried about the weather aspect of it, but we're also excited about what's under the floor, which is already roughed in mechanical duct runs and plumbing, which you can see here. This is actually our duct design from Energy Vanguard. Jeffrey Sauls over there helped us come up with where every single duct needs to terminate. So when McCray pulled out the SawTech with Boise Cascade to figure out how they were going to cut all these I-joists, they went ahead and cut in all these 8-inch round so that we don't have to do any additional cutting. We can essentially slide those ducts in before we get to the next LVL, before we get to our next solid blocking point. We already have that duct run in, so I don't have to use flex. I don't like to use a lot of flex except at the end for sound attenuation. I would prefer the efficiency and the low static I get out of a hard pipe run. And how did that work for you on the plumbing side, Joe?
Oh, it worked great. They even did it in an oval, so I can account for my rise.
Oh, you can adjust your fall
of my plumbing pipe. So they're out thinking it. This is so exciting.
Yeah, it's a great system. We're excited to use it on all our builds going forward, and we're really excited about having the Advantech X Factor subfloor because we're not going to be sanding floors later. Every single step that we're taking on this project is really about trying to take 2 or 3 steps ahead of where we would normally be at this stage, and that goes all the way through the build. Let's go inside and check it out. All right, so we're back inside the basement here at the Prairie Sun and Timber project, where Joe and I are showing you essentially the pre-installed duct runs and plumbing. And to Joe's earlier point, those are ellipses. They didn't give you, I got a nice 8.5-inch round because my ductwork wants to land right in the middle of that I-joist. But what's the benefit of that ellipse?
So that's going to allow me my 1/4 inch per foot over about 12 feet.
It keeps you in control.
Yeah. So I can start high and I'll end lower.
You've got all the room to adjust to make your fall work. But the other thing that I noticed is that I bought you a couple of 5s instead of a 10-foot stick because I was thinking, oh man, there's just going to be too many things to do here. And you immediately identified what? That you can flex it in.
Yes.
The ellipse allows for, essentially that slot cut to not plan ahead, not be on site with your framer while they're assembling the subfloor. It just so happens that we're framing this in-house with the help of our framer. But ordinarily, if you're dropping things off, you can tell your framer, hey, when you see these big 8-inch holes, throw this metal pipe in it. You can throw these 2-inch pipes in this ellipse.
Yep.
But if they forget,
you can still get it done with this. A little bit more difficult with the 8.5, but
then I have to switch over to flex.
But that's something your PM could easily do. It took, I don't know, I think it took 5 minutes to install it, and the joists are going in so quickly that it's only a matter of a couple hours before you've done the whole section.
Yeah, and it's very intuitive, even if you don't have the layout, which course, always have in hand.
This is key.
If for some reason you lay in that next eye joist and you see that it doesn't have a hole in it and the last 6 do, it's a pretty quick reminder, oh, this is where I got to throw that duct in. So this is a really cool system that, again, gives us the ability to move a little faster. And it's just, you know, it's a saw. It's a CNC type system. That SawTech technology, they plug in all the different lengths. Everything comes out to us labeled. So you put all the labels at one end, you start on the layout as directed, and it goes together super quick. All right, we have the good fortune of having Wolfgang Clapper. This is our framing lead on all of our projects last couple of years. He's framed most of our houses with Joe and I, and Wolf and Dylan have done a great job on this floor system, kind of working in tandem with our crew. And I don't want you to say anything awful about us and our guys as being bad framers, but I did want to ask you what you thought about this floor system, because this is a floor system that came to us from McCrae Lumber, our local yard, that came pre-cut with some extra stuff in it. You want to talk about what it is and how it went for you?
Yeah, this floor system is honestly incredible. It has notches already pre-cut, wind sent to make it very fast and efficient for duct work and all the mechanicals. I think that, you know, the layout when they come from McCrae, I mean, as long as you follow the plan, and as it was laid out here from Catalyst, I mean, they matched the plan, and subfloor was record fast. So, I mean, we were able to set it
just as quick as it gets.
Yeah.
So you run a small crew like we run a small crew. And I think that something that Joe brought up in a previous video, he was talking about how nice it is to work with engineered lumber because it's so much lighter. Like a one-man carry for a 24-foot joist is kind of unheard of in 2x stock, but
yeah,
really not too bad, especially when you're sliding across plate. Do you find that you prefer to work with one system over another? I know on our previous builds, we've done floor trusses, we've done dimensional, and we've done eye-joist. I don't even think I could say from firsthand experience, oh, this is this much faster. I would rely on you for that. So what would you say?
Here, right here. These are my favorite. If I could pick a floor system, it's going to be these.
Okay.
The trusses, obviously they're fast, durable, but little things we run into is just the end trusses just not working out. So rims in this case with TJIs are perfect.
Nice.
So yeah, I would say if I was to ever pick a floor system for my recommendation, it's going to be these. They're light, fast. They work easy. They're easy to pull. They have a wider than 1.5 inches on top and bottom. So
easy nailing.
Fastening.
Even I can hit the flange.
Easy, yeah. So a little bit more forgiveness as well. So
okay. What can you tell us about what's coming? Because Joe and I have not built with SIPS before, but you have. So do you have any words of caution for us? I feel like we've done everything in our power to make sure that this platform floor system that is almost complete right now with this Huber X Factor on top, that is the staging for this SIPS system to work exactly right. The straps are in place. What am I missing? What's coming my way that I don't know is going to hit me like a bus coming around the corner?
Honestly, if everything is built to the plan, measurements line up from end to end, squared perfectly, parallel everywhere, SIP panels, I mean, they're built just like these are built. They come ready to be set in place. So I think with the floor system, as we did it, we're running everything a little bit long just to give ourselves that second chance to go double check, pop our subfloor off, and then SIPs are going to work absolutely phenomenal. I think the way we've done it is probably the best scenario we could have ran into. Just with, we took away problems with just solving it again for the second time, double checking everything.
Yeah.
But what's coming is massive SIP panels. I mean, they're going to be big old foam blocks that throw together really quick, and with our level floor, lasering it, double checking everything twice, I think SIP panel guys might even be impressed as well.
Nice.
So.
Well, we like impressing the other tradespeople on the job, but the main thing is that we take care of our client, and that's where we wanted to prefigure all of our mechanical layout and get it into this floor system design. I know that we ask a lot of you. Joe and I ask a lot of you guys that isn't framing. You're helping us set windows, you're helping us with cladding details and air management, over roofs, all sorts of things that are not, hey framer, please frame. It's all beyond what is your normal scope of work. Does it tick you off when I say, hey, I know you're going to come in on a Sunday and help us stay on schedule by putting this floor system on, and then I go, don't forget to put in my ductwork when you get to FJ31. Does that slow you down much? I mean, this, I feel like, wasn't that slow, but I didn't do everything myself, so you got to be honest with the viewer.
I will be honest with the viewer. It takes planning. It takes somebody to let people know if a framer's coming and it's not your normal framing work, the person who's offered that. I knew that every passive home, every SIP panel home, every job is going to be different.
Sure.
You know that. So as long as everyone communicates through the build process, I mean, you really can't run into those problems unless you just never seen them before. So with knowing what was ahead of us, what was coming, that we had to watch out for things in a way. And the plans are very detailed and letting us framers and the next trade know, you know, what's coming as well. So even if we didn't know, everything's so detailed that we can see, like, hey, this isn't normal. Ask a question if we don't know. Don't just assume. So, yeah.
Well, that's pretty ideal. I'm excited about how quickly you were able to turn this concrete box into a wood box, and we'll see if we can't keep going up from there. Thanks a lot, Wolfgang. Really appreciate it. So what we have in our continuous wall assembly is the SIPS panel, 6.5 inch in thickness. So we're 7/16 OSB on either side, but that gives us a full 5.5 inches of EPS insulation continuous through the entire wall skin. And that's going to give us an effective R value of about 22.3. And that obviously is broken by any windows and doors, but otherwise has no thermal bridging anywhere in the assembly. Then we go to our roof panels, and you can see that's quite a bit more meaty. We're essentially talking about a 10.25 inch panel, again with an EPS core, and our effective R value here is about 38.8, 35.8, I think. The reason that we don't have to worry about the, R60 from the 21 building code is that this is, again, continuous. It's unbroken. There are no structural elements breaking this system up, providing that thermal bridge. It's not over a frame in the traditional way where you would have a bat in a cavity. This is continuous insulation. This is what the energy code's all about in pushing for that continuous exterior insulation. We're providing that in this EPS core SIPS panel. And all of these panels sit on the big, beautiful timber frame structure below. And that's what I want to show you next. Let's check it out. All right, for our timber frame structure, what we've got, and we're working with a company called Timberbuilt. They're out of New York. They offer essentially this as a turnkey package. They actually were on this job before we were. Joe and I were brought in because the client had made a deal with Timberbuilt for their plan, which they designed, for them to supply the timbers and the SIPS panels. That's all under one banner, and they actually come and install it. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. What I want to tell you about here is the way that timber framing works on a very general explainer from me, a non-timber framer. Essentially what we're looking at here is a Western red cedar. These are all of our exterior beams and posts. We are actually using an eastern white pine on the interior timber frame structure, and that's just an aesthetic choice. One is probably a little stronger, the pine, but the cedar has some natural resistance to the elements, so that's why we're choosing it out here. What you can see here is they've already prepared all of this. This was all cut in New York and shipped here on a truck for installation. They've pre-cut, pre-fit everything with these mortises and tenons. So this would be the tenon, which is cut perfectly to drop into a mortise. And you can see they have drilled already for the pegs that will be driven through to interlock these two elements. So when in place, this tenon drops into this mortise, the pegs hold these two boards together as tightly as any nail or screw ever could. And because of the fitment being so precise between these two wood elements, it's a brilliant structural connection that provides aesthetic beauty as well as structural strength. So that's what we're looking at with our timbers, and that's how you get to something like this. You can see the guys have already been hard at it. They started setting the timbers just yesterday, but they've been installing the SIPS for almost a week now. And the way that that began was with placement of the bottom plate on top of the floor system that we framed. And then the SIPS actually have a little pocket that sits down on top of the plate already secured to the floor, so you can get a shear connection there. And then as we get closer, we can take a look at how the SIPS go together. So after installing the bottom plate on top of our floor system, the SIPS provider slides the SIP down over the edge of it so that it can be secured with nails, just traditional gun nails, into that plate. That gets you your uplift and shear to a point. We actually have some special uplift resistant straps that were poured into the foundation. But then in order to attach this panel to this panel, we have these long screws with washers that actually pull these joints tightly together. And before that fitment occurs, there's an application of a sealant that will make an airtight seal between each of these elements so that we have both structure and respect for our control layers in terms of vapor and eventually water. I believe we can even count on that to a certain extent for air control, although we're going to show you more in our next episode how we're dealing with vapor and air on the exterior of this. But these structural screws are key to making this system very rigid and strong. Let's go inside and check it out. So I showed you the structural screws that are important for tying these panels together to get a wood-to-wood connection. But what I didn't really show you was the secret sauce of SIPS assembly. That's this SIPS seal joint sealant. And it's for your sausage gun, so that you can basically apply a bead of this at both sides of your flanges at this point and this point. And then obviously for those wood-to-wood connections, that's the gasket that is going to keep water and vapor from moving into your assembly from the exterior until we get this thing wrapped up. And then obviously to make it a serviceable product for the life of the home, we really want to make sure that that gasket is maintained. And that's a special chemistry that, again, we don't typically work with because we're usually framing traditionally. So this system is very specific to this application in the same way that you wouldn't usually have a 12-inch screw on your site either. So let's come on in and take a look here. We're mixing new technologies, engineered lumber, with good old-fashioned timber frame. And it happens all the way across the house.
Tell me what you do.
It's a good song, but I want you to be able to hear what I'm saying. What we've got is these beautiful pegs tying all of our brackets to our columns. So just like I showed you out in the yard, this piece has a mortise, a piece of wood that was cut perfectly to fit into a pocket, a tenon, on this post. It slides in, we hammer in the perfectly cut wooden dowels, and these pegs, these do have a structural rating that an engineer assigns to them. And that shear value is what interlocks this and this for a permanent structural connection. And that's the magic of this whole system. Every bit of these site-built or site-assembled trusses was cut in the yard in New York and assembled on site by the master craftsmen who have made this structurally possible and aesthetically beautiful in one step. There is a metal plate inside to reinforce this connection because of the way it needs to carry all of this, but that's above my pay grade. I'm not a structural engineer. I'm just marveling at the beauty of what we can still do with old craftsmanship and the perfect marriage with a super insulated skin from walls to roof. So that's the story of this site and what makes this a spectacular build in my opinion, and I hope you agree. Everything that we get in this building, in this volume above the basement floor, is all going to be vaulted because we want to celebrate the beauty of this wood structure. So even though we do have those engineered lumber elements, like this LVL, in order to carry the ceiling structure above our primary closet and bathroom, we're going to hide all of that so that we can celebrate this. And you'll see as we continue with the interior finishes, we're going to integrate some additional wood details. We're going to clad the ceiling in wood, actually a reclaimed wood product. And it's really going to celebrate the structure in a way that, frankly, Joe and I are always trying to do on our projects. It's a little bit frustrating as a craftsman to come in and do your very best work and then hide it all behind drywall and paint. So when we get the opportunity to celebrate structure, to celebrate our mechanical systems and all the things that we work so hard to achieve, it's a real pleasure. So stick with us and we'll show you more. So we talked about how we continue to make a structural connection from our SIPS panel through a bottom plate that just gets nailed off about every 4 inches on center, it looks like. Because Timberbuilt's providing the labor and assembly contract directly with our client, I haven't nailed off any of this. I'm explaining what I've seen them do. And one of the things that we had to do in order to prepare for their assembly was to get these Simpson straps installed when we cast the foundation. Because we've essentially taken something that would have been one continuous panel all the way down to our sill and nailed at that location to provide that uplift resistance, to provide that shear resistance. That connection's no longer there. We've segmented it. It's broken here, it's broken here. We don't have that continuous shear value, that continuous panel to provide that. What we have to do instead is provide uplift resistance with this STHD14RJ. It's a hold down strap that goes down into the concrete another, I don't know, 18 inches plus. And all of these nails will have to be installed in order to give this the structural resistance that's required at this corner specifically, but at every structural point across the entire design. This is what's providing the resistance to the uplift. And this is a critical item if you're going to be dealing with SIPS. This layout is one of the most important elements. Other things to note, if we're talking about preparing to build a SIPS house, we're a basement market, so we're dealing with a basement foundation, and you've got variance in thicknesses on forms. They're supposed to be 7.5. By the time they're poured, got a little fat at the top, it's 8.25. Basically, your walls are never quite perfect. I've never seen a foundation that was perfect. I know Steve talks about some that he's got, superior wall, this and that. You can get a slab a lot closer, but a foundation wall, even when well braced, will not be dead perfect. So you have to make your floor system dead perfect if your SIPs are already cut, because they can't adjust much. They can grow and shrink a little bit, but as soon as you start modifying them, you're potentially delaminating, you might be causing other problems, and you just don't want to have to fight that battle. So for us on this project, we spent a great deal of time making sure that our foundation, rim, and floor system were square. That, of course, enabled the SIPS installers to move much faster. But all of that attention to detail for a perfectly square floor system and perfectly placed hold downs becomes even more critical because you don't have very much adjustability once you pre-cut all your timbers in New York and ship them to site. So that was the element I wanted to share with you here at this corner, and we'll share more with you as we go on. I need to check on this guy. We got a rookie applicator out here. What do we got here?
How am I doing, boss?
Knock it off, Matt. We've already got that one done. Matt, how are you, man? Thanks for coming to Kansas City.
Dude, this house, the big orange, I can't wait to see this.
We had to do it,
exciting.
Man. So I'm excited to have you here because this is our first SIPS build.
Yep.
We're working with Timber Built on it. They did the timber frame and the SIPS panels, but we had to build for them to build. So I want to talk through that process with you.
Yeah, and I've done a timber frame and SIPS before too, and I had a couple of tricky difficulties. So I'm curious to hear what your experience was compared to mine, and maybe we can give these guys some kind of real world, here's what you need to think about as a builder.
I think that's the best thing we can offer because we can describe how it went for us and maybe someone else can do it a little better.
I like it, let's do it.
I'm no dummy. Let's do this discussion inside in the shade.
Prairie Sun and Timber, we'll see you inside. Oh man, look at that timber frame. That's the money shot right there, isn't it?
I know, right? The big truss.
Wow.
So this company out of New York, they pre-cut all of these, fit them together in their shop.
New York State?
New York State.
Okay. Gotcha.
I don't know if it's near Cooperstown or whatever. Timber Built is the name of the company. We're not sponsored by them, but this is their work, not mine.
Gotcha.
They basically had a contract with my client, and my client said, hey, this company will do this, this, and this, but they don't do any of the stuff that you guys do.
Gotcha.
Can you build the house? And they'll do this part.
Oh, interesting. So they almost came before you as the builder in a lot of ways, right?
It's the same as our barn dominium on the same site.
Yeah.
They said, hey, we've got Jamesport Builders building us a barn. This Amish crew will build the barn, but they can't pull a permit. They can't do the plumbing. They can't do. It's like, that's why we have a general contractor. That's the whole value of, if you could just hire people, then you wouldn't need me.
Right.
But they needed Joe's plumbing. They needed my electrical, my HVAC.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we did the under slab insulation over there and then made that whole barn work. We're doing the exact same thing here.
More importantly, they need your brain.
That's right. The coordination of the builder is really what's lacking.
Exactly.
And so honestly, there's been some challenges here with that.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that because the most important thing that we can do on Build Show Network is help other builders and tradespeople to sidestep these little problems.
That's right.
And I think
pass on our wisdom.
Man, the only thing that would have made this go better is if Joe and I were in charge of the whole deal.
Right.
Because these folks have a contract with my client, the Timber Built folks.
Yep.
So I don't have control over them.
Yeah.
I can't say you will do this or you won't get paid.
Yep.
And so when I said I'd like to flap a piece of Myrex over those timbers, that didn't happen. So now if I wanted to do an interior air control strategy, all I can do is seal it. I can use caulking. So anyway, I don't want to jump ahead.
Let me back up a little
Please.
bit. Like all this timber I'm seeing here, it looks structural.
It is.
It is actually holding some panels up.
Correct.
Okay.
These are holding the ridge in the same way that you would have a collar tie or your ceiling joist holding things together.
Gotcha.
These are providing a ridge support. However, in some parts of the house where we don't have timbers, we have other structural elements. As you can see, like this is going to be encapsulated in drywall. This is just where the plan changes from being open and vaulted to more compact. So there's LVL that's actually carrying over there.
Right.
So it's definitely a hybrid approach. Everything on this project is hybrid.
There's some framing and timber.
100%.
And then everything's infilled with SIPS.
Correct. You will see everything on the walkout level. That's all traditionally framed by us. So we've got our 2x6 and Zip R9 to the exterior. We've got I-joists holding up our X-Factor subfloor here. Joe and I self-performed that with our framing crew, Clapper Creations. And that's what the SIPS folks needed to start their work.
So in other words, what I'm standing on right now, this Advantech X-Factor, the deck as we would call it.
Yep.
This was you, and then they took over, put their timber frame up, and put their SIPS up.
That's right. And then they just walk away. They are out.
It's all yours.
That's right. So all of the water control, all of the air control, all the things that we as general contractors and builders have to do, the marrying of this person's work to this person, all that coordination, we have a disjointed process now because they left me with these SIPS panels, in my view, are not as robust in their structure as my typical zip system sheathing. They're just a commodity OSB. So you'll see from the exterior where you were working on that Proseco R-Guard outside, that fast flash application, we have rolled the entire exterior with Proseco Cat 5. And as we're doing that, we're delaminating the SIPS. It's pulling up just flake after flake. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I wish this was either pre-applied at the factory. Like, I don't know what Insulspan does. If they've got a spray rack, my gosh, let's put it to work.
That would be pretty cool.
Talk to my friends at Proseco in Lawrence. They would love to sell you about 15 billion gallons of fast flash in our yard.
Most SIPS projects have some type of seam tape on them, and then a standard house wrap on top of that.
And those details were supplied by Timberbuilt, and that was, frankly, that was a sticking point for Joe and I. When our client came to us for this contract, they said, "This is what Timberbuilt's going to provide. Will you do the rest?" And I said, "Only if we can use Proseco on it, because I need something that's going to be an integral." Full continuity, something to offer the builder protection, because there's a real high vapor risk with these. If you listen to, podcasts, Steve, all the great building science folks have written extensively about vapor risk with SIPS assemblies. And there haven't been that many failures, but I don't want to be one of the few and proud.
Yeah, and it really boils down to, you've got a beautiful airtight exterior now that the Proseco's up.
I do.
Prior to that, you might not have. And then also, we need to make sure that we don't have vapor moving through these SIPS panels to get to a cold condensing surface. Especially the ridge, which is where a lot of the failures have happened. So we really need to make sure wherever we've got ridge panels coming together, that the inside of that panel gets really well air sealed, which will then take care of the vapor on its own.
Which is why, if you look at the ridge beam over the kitchen area, you'll go, man, it would have been nice to flop a piece of Myrex over that, or do something more than what the folks from Timberbuilt did, this kind of black fibrous tape, which is discontinuous.
It's not really providing a lot of good for us.
Honestly, Joe and I may have to remove that and use some fast flash in those locations to really get our, or joint and seam filler, whatever it takes. I want this to be sealed up.
You probably could even use Big Stretch from Sashco, right?
We have a ton of Big Stretch on this job. We always do the inside of our window air detailing with that. That would be a very clean way to do it, because if you look at the masking we had to do on the back of the house to protect it from the really robust adhesives in the Proseco product, I could easily clean off a Big Stretch mess. I'd just peel it away and it wouldn't damage the beautifully finished timbers. Not this one, but this one. So it's always a trade-off, like every product in our builds.
Let's walk this way. I want to explain, if someone's watching and hasn't seen a SIPS panel before, let's talk just for a second what we're seeing here. There's an interior OSB that's continuous. There's an outside OSB that's continuous, and they can get up to like 8 foot by 32 foot OSB panels at the factory. It's bonded on both sides with glue to some type of probably EPS foam in the middle. And there's very little framing in this panel. I'm knocking on it, it sounds solid, but in reality,
just at the edges.
Just at the edges is structure. Otherwise, probably from here to here, there's nothing but foam.
So we've limited our thermal bridging.
Very little thermal bridging. So it's a good way to get a really continuous exterior insulation on your house.
Absolutely.
And you have to be a little cautious about understanding the marketing versus the reality of, you know, is this going to be cheaper than framing or not? And I have good relationships with SIPS manufacturers, so I'm not dogging them in any way.
No.
We're saying, though, that we need a smart general contractor ultimately to have full control of the project.
Yes.
And if you were to do this again, you would have a contract with the timber frame company.
Yep.
And with
give
the
me
SIPS
leverage.
manufacturer. And I would add into that too, from my experience, not all SIPS manufacturers are the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working with one particular SIPS manufacturer recently who I really like.
Oh, good.
But my SIPS manufacturer on my first SIPS project a dozen years ago was not very organized. I had lots of problems, and my budget for framing, which my guys framed it and it was their first SIPS project too, we blew it by like a factor of 3x on time. So there's some intricacies here. And one thing that I would say is, if you can find a frame carpenter as a general contractor who's done SIPS before, understands the system, there's a bit of embedded knowledge by doing this a couple times that makes a big difference and is really, really helpful. And some SIPS manufacturers actually have a good relationship with lots of framers that will travel.
Yes.
And that can be a benefit. But to Travis's point, you need that pre-construction meeting with the boss to go, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's these details that I want done. And when I'm out on site, we need to make sure that these are correct.
Yes.
Did I say that well?
Absolutely. The most important thing to me, if I'm the builder, that means I have all the risk, because the warranty isn't going to come from this other company.
Right.
My client is going to call me with a problem.
That's right.
But I don't want ownership of something that I haven't had control of the assembly.
Right.
It's the same way on any other job, frankly.
Yeah.
So this is just no different.
Yeah.
But if we eliminate that problem from it, I agree. Good system. I love the idea of limiting thermal bridges.
Yeah.
But when we go downstairs and talk about my down walls, we're going to talk about the real world comparison of this R value delivered versus this R value delivered. And I guess I don't know specifically the cost delta, but there's a compelling argument for both systems.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too.
I guess if we were going to talk through any other details in this space, it would really be, you know, the ridge that's going to be hard to do any additional caulking or sealing.
Yeah, you can really see it now. So all this timber is structural, but it's landing on kind of traditional framing.
Right.
But what you're seeing here is two roof SIPS panels with that joint that's the really important joint.
Critical.
That's really hard to get to after the fact.
Yeah, there's a big beam in my way.
Yeah, there's a big beam in your way.
Yeah. So we'll do the best that we can to seal it up, but in order to have air sealing be effective, it has to be continuous.
That's right.
And so every place that I can't reach now, we're just relying on that exterior Proseco Cat 5, because if there's no air entering a system, if there's no air able to leave a system, that limits where can it go? There's no draw.
And to that point, once you get your windows in, you could do a blower door test on this house. And I bet we are going to be real tight here. I predict this to be like half of passive house levels.
We hit 0.3 on the bar, and I'd love to hit 0.3 in here. I mean, we really detailed the heck out of it. So
from what I've seen so far, I bet this will easily get that same number, which means that there's such a little amount of airflow going through that assembly that mainly, frankly, is probably a little bit of leakage from some operable windows.
Yeah. And honestly, other than the humidity sources that are client driven, the shower, the kitchen, exfiltration, you and I standing in here sweating and breathing on each other.
That's right.
That's our primary vapor load. And we're going to throw some Santa Fe dehues in. We always do dedicated dehumidification on our builds. So our risk is really low.
That's right.
But we deal in risk.
Yeah,
so we've got to look at it respectfully. And that's what I wanted to talk through with you. I have to say, while I'm not going to switch all my builds over to SIPS, it is cool to see it come together fast.
Yeah.
Big panels screwing together, does go fast, big volumes. The timber frame is beautiful. I mean, that old world craftsmanship.
Timber frame is beautiful.
Watching these guys drive pins together to lock that mortise joint in, that's awesome.
I do like the idea that you could put a pull-up bar anywhere in the house too, right?
That's right.
I mean, we could literally put a pull-up bar anywhere on this wall.
We got backing.
Hang your heavy TV or your picture, all those things.
That's true.
There is some inherent, wow, this feels really strong when you go inside feeling to a house like that. But speaking of strong, how about we get a tour of the basement and we'll see what happened at our feet level and below before this all started.
I love it. Let's go.
All right, we'll meet you down there.
All right, Matt, this is my big dramatic giant back of the house walkout condition into this creek draw.
Man, this is beautiful. Walkout basement. So what I'm seeing here, it looks like, is probably concrete at the front wall that's full in ground.
Yes, sir.
And then this walkout condition here is all framed with Zip R, it looks like?
Yes, sir.
Right?
We got Zip R9 on the back. I wanted to do at least as well as we're doing upstairs with my downstairs walls. So we got 2x6 traditional framing.
Okay.
Obviously for us, that's advanced framing, or what Steve would call framing.
So 24-inch on center.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're trying to limit our thermal bridging as well, but the Zip R9 does that for us. We've got a
it's
continuous thermal
R9
break.
too.
Yeah, buddy.
Ooh, dude. That's impressive. Putting the throttle up.
That's
I like
right.
It.
It takes a little bit longer, bigger nail. We're a 3.5 on that.
3.5 inch nail to nail in probably a slightly tighter pattern.
3 inch on center.
Okay, 3 inch on center.
At perimeter, and then we're 8 in the field instead of 12s.
Got it. I like it.
So,
And we're going to talk later about your windows because you've got a high grade, energy efficient window. But right now, tell me about these guys, because these are from the same timber company, I'm assuming.
that's right. Yep, they did all the timber elements on the project, and they pre-cut them, dried them in their place. They stained them, they brought them out and drove the pins.
I don't see any fasteners. How's this attached?
On the inside of the house, they drove out
really?
with ledger locks.
Oh, okay.
Big structural timber screws.
Cool.
And that's the same long screws they used to join the SIPS panels together at the splines, from one wall section to another, even at the roof.
Gotcha.
So they handled the structural aspect of that, but this is where we married our work and theirs, because again, they only did from platform up.
Right.
So this was all our crew. So we've got the foundation set, obviously did our rock wool underslab, interior walls, rock wool, all the stego details.
Yep.
That all got done by our crew. We framed the down walls, pulling square, which, you know, we're not framers. That was a slow, very meticulous process, because on a normal foundation, we have the benefit as builders in the field, framers especially, are used to, walls aren't perfect, man.
Right.
That 7.5 inch wide form sometimes is 8 at the top.
Right.
And sometimes it's 7 at the bottom.
Sure.
Sometimes it's 8 at the bottom. You got a little bit of woggle in that wall, you can pick that up with your mud sill and you can frame it straight by hanging it out a quarter inch here.
But you couldn't do that with this
I
because
can't, I gotta be perfect.
The SIPS is coming pre-baked.
They've already cut it.
Yeah.
This stuff was drying in New York a year ago.
Yeah.
It was already cut.
Gotcha.
So I had to be on the money. And frankly, the guys that set the SIPs started in a short wall section and they weren't quite on the 8th that I was on. We did the longest straight wall as our control wall. So there was some adjustment there. There's a lot of, you know, things that if it was all within our purview, things might have gone a little smoother, but we adjusted, and we've got a rain screen on this. So if we have misalignment, I can build that out in the rain screen. It's not gonna be a problem for me. But this is us down here.
Looks really good.
I do want to give the timber built guys credit though, because everywhere that they were putting brackets up, you can see over here on the primary suite, far into the house, and all over the front of the house, there are brackets that set on our 2B PROSA code at the time, SIPS. And I said, hey guys, you can't put anything applied unless you put Cat 5 behind it. And I gave them a gallon. Really about 5 gallons, and said, here's a roller, here's some fast flash.
And they did it?
You can't put anything, yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
good.
So that's an area where I like that. That's us working together.
Yeah, that's good.
And that makes for a successful project.
That's a great point.
Why don't you come in and I'll show you this basement.
Yeah, so let's see this advanced 2x framing. Man, this looks nice with all your rock wool. So this is all concrete wall.
Yep.
That you shot rock wool in.
Correct.
This is 2 or 3 inches?
Yeah, that's 3 inches. That's R12 of Comfort Board 80.
Okay,
And we're installing it with the T4IF ramset gun. So that goes up really fast for us.
Nice.
We went ahead and ran it down to our Comfort Board underslab. So we have thermal continuity and a slab that's thermally broken.
Very cool.
So the order of operations is obviously ground rough plumbing, level out your gravel, place your Comfort Board, and then we're stego on top of that. Roll it up the wall 6-8 inches, seal it, and then we do the walls.
Way to go, man. That's impressive.
That's in episode 1. You got to watch episode 1 to get all those details.
That's right, episode 1. All right, this is episode 2.
So here in episode 2, we did the floor system.
So then the floor, so the wall got built, then the floor.
Correct.
And as we said earlier, advanced framing, 2x6.
Yes, sir.
Zip R9.
Right.
And then the floor then sits on top of the wall like a standard house.
Standard house, yeah.
I am liking these eye-joists though. These look nice and straight.
Man.
Have you guys typically use eye-joists here? And
every time budget allows, we use eye-joists, and it almost always allows.
Yeah.
We're fortunate we get to build nice custom stuff, and our clients don't complain about a straight floor, and
really nice.
one that doesn't squeak or bounce with the
Am I seeing an oblong cut for that pipe?
You like that?
On that I-joist? What is that?
So I know you do a lot of stuff with Builders First Source. We do a lot of stuff with our friends at McCrae Lumber. That's our local yard.
Okay.
And they just got through a deal with Boise Cascade and McCrae worked together to bring SawTech technology to Kansas City. SawTech is basically like a CNC machine that will pre-cut your entire floor system. If you give them your HVAC diagram, which, you know me, mechanical contractor,
All right.
I was planning this stuff out a year ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
You hand them your diagram and say, this is what I want. We're gonna have 8-inch round here. It goes from here to here.
And did you have help figuring out what
Oh, of
ducts were
course.
going where, or did you do that all yourself?
No, I'm not near as good as I want people to think. We had Jeffrey Sauls down at Energy Vanguard do our duct design.
Ah, gotcha.
But we did walk through all the details of, I want this equipment. We're gonna use Santa
That's
Fe
Allison
DHUs.
Bale's company.
That's right.
Yeah, Energy Vanguard in Atlanta.
They're fantastic.
So they're the ones who said, okay, we need this trunk line.
Yep.
And they go ahead and pre-cut this because we know it's going in.
Yeah.
But the magic part that I don't understand, and maybe this is some Hollywood action here, is that appears to be one long pipe that's not fully connected yet. How the heck did you get that in there?
So this is where it's really nice to be a self-performing builder. Because like I said, hey, our crew's not framers by trade. That's not our one thing we do all the time.
Right.
But we have a great relationship with Wolfgang Clapper and Dylan at Clapper Creations, our framing contractor for years, building our houses. And we said, look, we'll help you roll joists and get this floor system down, but I want to throw hard pipe in as we go. So before you set that LVL, I'm going to throw that 8-inch round in there. And now I don't have to use flex. I can have a better performing system, lower static pressure.
Yeah.
I'm still going to use flex at the ends where I want sound attenuation, but I can get a better product if I'm willing to participate. And that's what we're all about.
So this duct that's right over my head here, there's actually 2 of them as I walk down this direction. All these were slid in as we call them, as you're rolling the trusses up.
Yes.
And all those now are in place, because I mean, it looks like a magic trick to think, how the heck did they get that pipe up there? I mean, it appears to be a 8-foot section of pipe on a 16-inch on-center I-joist.
That's right.
That's impressive.
So we just did it as we went. And I didn't mean to ignore your point about the ellipses. When we had SawTech at McCrae cut all this, Joe's our master plumber.
Yep.
And he said, well, it's great that you can do this, but I got to be able to adjust in the field. I got to create fall. That's great that your ducts are going to be all in and they can be level and we can cut out the full middle third. But I need some adjustability to create fall and connect my sink and my shower and all that stuff, my vent. So they cut the ellipses for my plumbing and they cut my rounds, and they even can cut square for my, I've got trunk over here, so I've got a rectangular cut on this side for my main trunk.
Man,
so
that's awesome.
That's one of the great things about your local partnerships. You can work with your people, and it's a real thrill to be able to do these next level systems, honestly, for a little bit less labor. Because can you imagine how much time I would spend on a ladder with my 8-inch hole saw and my hole hog, or a Sawzall? Just gutting these joists, making it look terrible.
Yeah, and how would you even get it in there anyways?
This is so much better.
That's so much
So they pre-cut it. Our guys at McCrae delivered it all labeled. It was paint by number, man. I had a little book that said this one, this one, this one. They're all labeled. I just set them down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
That's super fun.
So this is the kind of stuff that we like to do, and this is the kind of stuff that I've seen you doing on the network for years, where it's like, hey, what's the next best thing we can do? What's our next efficiency gain? What's the next innovation?
Make every house a little better than the last one.
Like
and
basics
I love what you've done here. Super impressive. What's next on episode 3? What are we coming up to next?
Oh, man.
Because I'm going to say we're going to shoot that next, aren't we?
Yeah. So we want to start talking more on the exterior. We're going to do windows and our wall treatment. So that's really where we're going to get into that.
Gotcha.
The Proseco application is a big deal. Our window package is awesome. We're going to get into all that stuff. And then in episode 4, we might even talk about our over roof that's vented, which is fancy.
I like a good over roof.
Who doesn't love a good over roof?
I love a good over roof.
So yeah, we'll get into more exterior elements there. So
Travis,
you're welcome
impressive,
back
man.
anytime, Matt. Thanks for coming.
Hey, let me plug you real quick. If you guys are new to the series, you don't know Travis Brungart, he and his partner Joe are very unique out in the builder world because these guys are licensed tradesmen who also are general contractors. So you hold two two licenses, I should
Mechanical
say.
and electrical for me.
Mechanical and electrical, and Joe holds a plumbing and a GC license.
You got it.
And so these guys are incredibly rare out there in the world. They've been shooting videos for about 2 years now on Build Show Network.
I think so.
And brand new for you, this past year, we just started the Building Consensus podcast that he and Brandon are hosting, and that's on Build Show Network as well. So thebuildshow.com. Go check out, if you're the first time here, go check out Travis's videos. He's been shooting terrific videos from his job sites now for 2 years. And come back for the next episode on
The Prairie Sun and Timber series here on The Build Show.
Build Show.